Joining us now, covers the Cougs for KSLSports.com. He's our buddy Mitch Harper. What's up, Mitch?
It's busy, 12 hours or so for BYU basketball, getting two key players back into the fold.
Yeah, Richie Saunders, Dallin Hall this morning announcing they're coming back to BYU. Before the BYU angle, can you tell me what Mark Pope's role or not role is in this? Are these guys he tried to get to Kentucky and couldn't?
Richie Saunders, he tried to get to Kentucky. He was on a visit to Lexington earlier this week, but ultimately he comes back to BYU. And, Kentucky's also in the mix for Otega Oweh from Oklahoma and Stojakovic from Stanford, so that could play a role too. But Saunders comes back, and, Kevin Young made it a top priority to retain this roster. Dallin Hall had heavy interest from Duke, Oklahoma, Clemson, Utah State, and he runs it back to BYU. So these are pretty noteworthy additions. And, Richie Saunders, third in offensive rating in the Big 12 Conference this past year. Dallin Hall was seventh in assist rate in the league. These are key pieces for BYU to have a chance to compete in a league that's going to be deeper next season with the addition of the four corner schools. Like, there's still work to be done for BYU's roster. Just to assume they're going to be better than they were last season, I think that's a bit premature. But this gives them a chance to, entertain the conversation of them being back in the NCAA tournament mix, and that's really all you can ask for in year one with a new regime.
Tell us about this staff hire, Mitch. Reading your write-up on it, I like his background. I mean, he seems like he's qualified to do a really good job.
Yeah, Dunson comes from Stanford, and he was under Jared Haas's staff. And, the big thing on him is that he's just got a recruiting background. His whole coaching tenure, time since his playing days concluded, it's about recruiting. And I think that's going to be key for Kevin Young to assemble, a staff that's got coaches that are deep in the recruiting game, because that's just a foreign world to Kevin Young, who's been operating in the NBA for the past 15 years. So, Dunson's recruiting connections, I think, are going to help, piecing together this roster, because right now they've got 5 scholarships available. So there's a lot of work to be done to get this thing assembled for next season.
So a lot of goodwill with those two players coming back to BYU. You mentioned the open spots. How close are they to being a competitive roster again? Or do you think they are ready to go day one and they just need to find some pieces around the edges?
I think they're going to be competitive. I think the only issue is just you're in a league where at best you're probably the 7th best team right now. I mean, you see the additions Kansas has made. Houston gets Milos Uzan from Oklahoma. He's going to be a great replacement potentially for Jamal Shedd. Houston's going to be loaded. Iowa State's national title good. I mean, you just go on, and then, Baylor's got A.J. Edgecombe, who from New York. I mean, this league will be so much better next season. And you could argue last season BYU had kind of a light Big 12 schedule with some of the scheduling breaks that they did have. So, again, I think that, this is a moment for BYU to be very excited about what Kevin Young can do, but I think it's still going to take time. And I think they've got to address the post. Losing Ali Khalifa to Louisville was a noteworthy loss in the sense of just from continuity and size. BYU does not have much size. They only have one player above 6'7", and that's Noah Waterman, and he's not a big. He's a stretch 4. They got Foose coming back, who's 6'6". He's your center right now, but you've got to add some size in the post, and that's going to be the challenge for BYU when putting together this roster. But it's definitely a good starting point by retaining most of this roster from last season.
So where does McKay Hillstead fit into the quarterback room, Mitch?
Man, that is a fascinating addition for BYU, and I think that when people look at that on the surface and just assume it's just kind of a move that's not going to make a dent in that quarterback unit, I disagree. I think he's got the ability at some point to start. I think even Scotty G said that on his show and on Twitter. And he's the voice of the Aggies, who's seen every snap of McKay last season. He's got talent, and I think that at a minimum, this is an addition that, gives BYU, puts, Jake Retzlaff and Gary Bohannon on notice that you got to be at your best. And I think what's fascinating about this dynamic of BYU's quarterback unit is that unlike last year where you knew who the guy was and there was no one outside of Keaton Slovis that had any sort of experience at the college level, you've got 4 quarterbacks at BYU who have started games. And I get, you got more than one, you don't have one. I get that. But I think that even after fall camp, this will be a deal where you have to perform consistently to maintain that job. Kalani always talks about every single day there's competition. That's going to be the case here with this quarterback unit. So, if Jake Retzlaff gets anointed the number one guy in week 1, but if they have a lackluster performance as they did against Sam Houston in week 1 out of the gate, then you've got options to turn to, guys that gave experience or have experience at the FBS level. So I think Hillstead's a really good player, and I think that he's someone that also helps your cause in terms of underclassmen and kind of building out the quarterback pipeline. BYU had a couple recruiting cycles where they missed on not signing a single quarterback, and that's put them behind the 8 ball to where they're turning to these one-and-done senior grad transfers. You can't play in that game at the quarterback position every single year. And even in this 2025 recruiting cycle, they have yet to sign a quarterback. And you look across the nation, many of the top quarterback prospects are already going off the board. So you're now getting to that world of the 3-star, the lightly recruited prospects that are more developmental. You have to kind of build this thing out and have some guys that you feel could be, future starting quarterbacks in the Big 12. And I think McKay Hillstead showed enough last year at Utah State that makes you kind of feel that he could be a starter. I mean, he goes for $399 against a top 25 James Madison team and put them in a position to, be in that game late. So after being dug in a hole down 24-zip early. So I think it's an important addition for BYU. I'm a little bit surprised they actually did it because, when I asked Aaron Roderick if they would add another transfer portal quarterback in the post-spring window, he just simply said no. And, McKay Hillstead being a local guy and I think someone that can help that roster, it ties into what BYU always looks for in the portal where you can build up the team with an addition. I think it definitely helps the cause.
Sorry to switch back to basketball, but sounds like a cool opportunity for the players currently on the BYU roster to go check out the Phoenix Suns and Kevin Young tonight.
Yeah, they'll be inside the arena to see, the Suns in action against the Timberwolves. Dallin Hall will be there. Richie Saunders, he's traveling abroad, so he's not expected, of course, to be there. But, yeah, you get a chance to see their coach in action, and it's not very common. I mean, I think back to all the NBA coaches that have transitioned over to college. Fred Hoiberg's probably one of the more successful ones who's currently at Nebraska, but he wasn't an acting NBA coach, in the transition to college. So it's very unique that these BYU players get a chance to see a lead assistant for an NBA playoff team and kind of be around the Suns tonight. So definitely a unique opportunity. I think one that can, help their cause to, maybe kind of get to know their coach even a little bit more, because that's always the challenge with, getting a new coaching staff is, these players did not, pick this coach, but in this era of the portal, they do have that. They have other options to explore, and a few of these guys have already picked, and the guys that have stayed out of the portal, clearly they're very intrigued by what Kevin Young can provide, and I think it's a noteworthy deal that he's offering this opportunity to them.
What do you have your eye on for the rest of the NFL draft?
Kingsley Suamataia, of course, and I think that Keaton Slovis, the run that of quarterbacks, I think it's created an opportunity where 6th round, 7th round, someone takes a flyer on a quarterback, and that might be Keaton Slovis. Seeing that wave of QBs taken that early, he's in a spot where he might get drafted. So I think those are the two things I'm looking for. Also, Aiden Robbins, I think, is very interesting, a running back from BYU. But I would expect he's more of a priority undrafted free agent, just considering there's just not much draft capital invested into running backs these days. But I think he's a guy that will get an opportunity and he'll perform well. He's huge. He's got great measurables and size, and I think he'd be a really good player in the NFL. But I think, BYU's, doing a nice job at least every year getting one guy. There was that stretch about a decade ago where you maybe go back-to-back years without draft picks. And, Kalani has made it a point in this program to value the NFL. And he's clearly stated he wants to get guys to the league and make that a top priority. And I think it's helped, be getting more draft picks, from BYU, whereas there was just kind of a stretch there where that wasn't happening.
Mitch, we appreciate you and all your fine work and effort. Check out Mitch's stuff at KSLSports.com. I know it's been crazy busy for everybody, but in the BYU world, it's been just as busy as everything else. So great job, and we appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Mitch.
Appreciate it, guys. Take care.
The one and only Mitch Harper.